At 2:43 a.m. local time, a crimson glow tore through the horizon off the Venezuelan coast. The sea was black and silent just seconds before three massive oil rigs owned by the Chinese state corporation Sino Energy erupted in simultaneous fireballs. Each platform stood like a burning tower in the dark waters, their steel frames twisted molten metal raining down into the Caribbean. The closest coastal radar base at Punta Cardón registered the shockwaves before their operators even understood what they were seeing. Captain Luis Ortega of the Venezuelan Coast Guard shouted over the radio, "Rig Delta is gone. Repeat, Delta is gone." The communication crackled, swallowed by static, as the second explosion rolled through. The blast radius lit up the decks of nearby Chinese supply ships. Flames rose over 200 meters into the air, oil pipelines ruptured, and columns of black smoke spread like a death shroud. Fishermen along the coast of Falcon watched in disbelief, recording the inferno with shaky hands. In Beijing, it was late afternoon when the feed reached the Crisis Command Center. The room went silent as grainy satellite footage showed the rigs engulfed, each explosion too precise, too synchronized to be an accident. General Xu Jianping of the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy leaned forward and muttered one word in Mandarin: sabotage. Within the hour, emergency beacons from the rigs confirmed something even stranger. Internal system logs showed external tampering. The rigs' power grids had been overridden by encrypted command signals originating not from Venezuela, not from China, but from an untraceable military-grade relay in the open Atlantic. Beijing's Ministry of State Security issued a statement calling it an act of hostile interference, while the Chinese Foreign Ministry publicly accused foreign sabotage with strategic intent. On social media, #Caracas Meltdown began trending within minutes, with leaked footage showing what looked like drones hovering moments before the blast. By dawn, Venezuelan naval patrols had formed a defensive perimeter around the site. Oil slicks burned on the surface like liquid fire. From a distance, the flames looked like floating volcanoes, their reflections shimmering on the waves. Local villagers said the explosions felt like thunder from below the sea. Military divers were deployed to search for survivors, but what they found were fragments of carbon composite debris parts that resembled the casing of military drones. Chinese engineers on board the command vessel Hailong 09 confirmed the material was not of Chinese or Venezuelan origin. At 9:15 a.m., Venezuelan President Nicolas Marquez convened an emergency meeting with Admiral Jorge Arriaza, commander of the Bolivarian Navy. If this was an attack, Marquez said, his voice low and shaking, "Someone just declared war on our oil." The admiral's reply was grim, and it was done clean. No radar trail, no satellite trace. Whoever did this knew our systems. Across the Pacific, the Chinese Defense Council ordered the immediate deployment of Task Group 178, led by the destroyer Changsha, toward Venezuelan waters, under the guise of humanitarian and environmental support. But internally, Beijing had already approved Operation Black Coral, a covert joint mission with Venezuelan special forces. Its objective: identify, locate, and neutralize whoever orchestrated the Caracas explosions. Within hours, an unmarked Chinese Y-9 transport plane touched down at El Libertador Air Base, unloading men in black tactical uniforms. No insignia, no names. Only the silent emblem of a dragon coiled around a sword. The Caribbean, once calm, was now a chessboard of vengeance. As night fell again, the burning rigs continued to rage offshore, their skeletons glowing red against the endless dark. Satellite imagery showed something new: an unidentified submarine moving eastward beneath the wreckage zone, slow, deliberate, and invisible to commercial radar. Someone was still down there, and they hadn't finished what they started. 2 days after the inferno, a thick gray fog blanketed the Venezuelan coastline. The ocean had gone eerily still, the scent of burnt oil still hanging heavy in the air. Aboard the Venezuelan frigate ARV Mariscal Sucre, Captain Daniela Ruiz stared through her binoculars toward the remains of the rigs. What she saw was surreal metal skeletons half sunk into the water, still smoking. The sea itself seemed poisoned. Around her, Chinese and Venezuelan officers worked in silence, analyzing drone footage and sonar maps. a massive magnetic anomaly had been detected beneath the blast zone, an object nearly 60 meters long, metallic and moving. At 0200 hours, the Joint Command Center inside Fort Tiuna came alive. Beijing had activated its elite covert unit Shadow Division 43, tasked with retaliatory operations beyond Chinese borders. Colonel Li Jung, a veteran of cyber warfare in the South China Sea, stood beside Venezuelan General Arriaza as holographic maps projected suspected attack coordinates across the Atlantic. The signal originated from here. Li pointed his gloved finger hovering over a red pulse mark. North of Aruba, within NATO surveillance range. General Arriaza frowned. "So we strike there?" Li replied coldly. "No, we vanish there." That same night, the Joint Strike Team began assembling under total radio silence. 2 Chinese J-31 stealth fighters were flown in under diplomatic cargo manifests, while Venezuelan Su-30S stood by for cover missions. Meanwhile, underwater drones disguised as oceanic survey bots were deployed near the wreckage to locate what lay beneath. By dawn, they found it a semi-buried black submarine hull, no markings, no flags, its propeller system shattered. A ghost vessel. Li reviewed the footage in disbelief. "This isn't ours," he whispered, "and it isn't American." The Venezuelans exchanged uneasy glances. The wreck bore laser scorch marks, suggesting it had been attacked before the rig explosions. Whatever triggered the blast was deeper than sabotage. It was part of something hidden. At noon, the Chinese destroyer Changsha arrived in formation with the Venezuelan corvette Guayqueri. The Joint Task Force initiated Phase 1 of Operation Black Coral, retrieve the wreckage, trace its electronics, and deploy a counter-espionage strike on the Atlantic relay source. Colonel Li ordered the team to operate under electromagnetic silence. No transmissions, he warned. If they can find us, once they can find us again. Divers descended through the blackened waves, their helmet lights slicing through the murk. One diver, Venezuelan Sergeant Miguel Herrera, radioed through static, "Colonel, this hull, it's weight." The line cut off. 30 seconds later, sonar detected a sudden pulse, like a heartbeat from below. Seconds after that, the ocean erupted. A pressure wave slammed into the Guayqueri, knocking crewmen to the deck. From the deep, a plume of bubbles and oil burst upward, followed by a flash of blue-white light. The divers vanished. The sonar room screamed alarms. Colonel Li shouted, "Contact, contact!" A shadow, massive and metallic, rose briefly on radar before disappearing again. The ship's anti-submarine sensors picked up fragments, small drones moving fast, circling the fleet like sharks. The frigate opened fire with depth charges, while Chinese helicopters dropped sonar buoys in a grid. The calm sea transformed into a war zone of flashes and thunder. Then silence. The sonar showed nothing. Whatever had attacked them had vanished, leaving behind only fragments, twisted pieces of composite shell engraved with strange serial codes beginning with GX09. Li's face paled. He recognized the signature. It matched a prototype from an abandoned Chinese weapons program scrapped 5 years ago. Someone had resurrected it. Someone outside of China. As the sun set, Colonel Li met General Arriaza privately. If this technology escaped containment, Li said it's no longer just an act of war. It's a message. The general nodded grimly. Then we send one back. That night, a convoy of unmarked aircraft took off from Maracay Air Base, heading east toward open sea. No lights, no call signs. Operation Black Coral was no longer defensive. It had turned into a hunt. At 03:17 a.m., the unmarked aircraft convoy broke through the dense Caribbean cloud cover, flying low over the Atlantic. Inside the lead plane, a modified Y-20 command transport, Colonel Li Jung studied the data feed, streaming across his console. The Chinese satellite Tianyan-7 had just detected a faint electromagnetic burst 120 miles northeast of Aruba, near a deserted chain of islands used in the past by NATO for classified drone testing. The source matched the relay pattern from the original oil rig sabotage. The Venezuelans called it the Eye. Li called it the target. Below them, the ocean was calm, reflecting the silver light of a crescent moon. Aboard the Venezuelan destroyer ARV Sucre, Captain Ruiz prepared her fleet for synchronized assault. All ships maintain radio silence until confirmed visual. She ordered her tone steady despite the tension. On the horizon, lightning flickered dry storms common over this stretch of sea, but to the radar operators, each flash could have been a missile ignition. The first drones launched from the destroyer's deck Sino Energy Type 09 recon units designed to scan for stealth signatures. Within minutes, their thermal cameras locked onto a structure, metallic, half-submerged, radiating power from below the surface. It wasn't a ship. It was a floating relay fortress. Colonel Lee's jaw tightened. "So it's true," he said softly. "They built this here." The Eye was a circular platform, disguised as a derelict oil facility bristling with antennae and sensor domes. And from its center rose a dark tower emitting a rhythmic pulse, each wave matching the interference that had hijacked the Sino Energy rigs days before. The Joint Task Force moved in. Venezuelan missile boats formed a perimeter, while Chinese J-31S swooped in low, locking their laser designators on the structure. The order came through a coded burst engage target priority alpha. The first strike came from the air. 2 Chinese YJ-91 anti-radiation missiles screamed through the sky, their exhaust trails slicing through the darkness. They hit the outer ring of the platform, sending metal shards flying and igniting fuel tanks along its deck. A blinding white explosion tore through the sea, but then something unexpected counterfired. From beneath the platform, small autonomous submarines launched upward, firing torpedoes toward the attacking ships. One Venezuelan corvette took a direct hit and split in half, flames engulfing its bow. Over the radio, Ruiz shouted, "Return fire, full barrage." The sky became chaos missiles, arcing tracer rounds cutting through smoke jets, diving in precision strikes. The Eye's tower began collapsing, each explosion reflected like thunder across the waves. Colonel Lee's aircraft circled overhead, watching the destruction unfold. Then his technicians screamed multiple inbound signals surfaced to airlocks. From the wreckage below, 6 missiles launched vertically, homing toward the Y-20. The pilot banked hard chaff, filling the night sky like silver rain. 2 missiles veered off, but the third struck the tail section, tearing it apart. Brace Lee shouted as alarms screamed. The aircraft plummeted toward the sea smoke trailing behind it. Just before impact, Lee grabbed the encrypted drive from his console, the data logs proving that the technology used in the sabotage originated from a multinational weapons contractor with ties to both NATO and rogue private networks. He ejected the capsule through an emergency buoy before the plane hit the water. Seconds later, the Y-20 exploded into a flaming arc across the black waves. By dawn, the Eye was gone, reduced to twisted metal and boiling oil. The sea burned like a mirror of the first disaster. Beijing remained silent. Caracas declared victory but refused to release details. The encrypted buoy drifted north, carried by currents toward international waters. Inside it, the data blinked, waiting to be found, a signal of warning and revenge. And somewhere far below the Atlantic, a sonar beacon pulsed again. Once, twice. Then silence. Whatever had started this firestorm had not ended. It had merely changed its frequency.